Hello, students. In this brief presentation, we're going to look at some of the characteristics of the middle school student. This reflects some of the key material that is in Chapter 1 of your text. Generally speaking, there are three phases of adolescence. Early adolescence occurs from ages 10 to 14. I have two children right now that are in that phase. God bless me. Middle adolescence, ages 14 to 18, and I have two children that are in that phase as well, so I need all the prayers I can get. And then late adolescence is age 18 and beyond. Before the 1980s, little attention was paid to adolescent development. Education initiatives focused on early childhood intervention and the implementation of Head Start and Title I funding. As educators became increasingly aware of the transitions that this stage of development posed, new focus on middle schoolers started to surface. The uniqueness of adolescence is that the student is neither an adult nor a child, but they're at an awkward self-realization phase of development, and they really are constantly developing, which makes it a little more awkward. They're experiencing emotional, physical, and intellectual challenges with much of this transition. And so I'd like you to take a moment and think, what were your struggles during middle school? And even if you weren't in an isolated middle school, like I attended a K through 8th small Catholic school, I have distinct memories from that 6th and 7th grade period. I seem to grow out a little bit of my awkwardness by 8th grade. But looking at page 6 in particular of your textbook, how do the characteristics of middle schoolers affect classroom instruction and management? Some of them maybe want to laugh out loud, that they eat all the time. Oh yes, they're always hungry. Their music is too loud. They take social issues very seriously. They cry a lot. They also laugh a lot. There are a host of issues that are very unique to early adolescence, and it's important for us to not only be aware of them, but also to think about ways that we'll deal with them if they become an issue within our classroom. So for much of the history of research on adolescence, writers such as Robert Havenhurst have portrayed human life as a series of discrete stages of development, with each stage involving unique challenges or tasks that must be mastered for successful progress to the next stage, for the next stage to occur. For Havenhurst, a developmental task was a task which arises at or about a certain period in the life of an individual, successful achievement of which leads to his happiness and to success with later tasks, while failure leads to unhappiness in the individual, disapproval by society, and difficulty with later tasks. Developmental stage theorists such as Sigmund Freud, Jean Piaget, Erik Erikson, and Lawrence Kohlberg have contributed greatly to the understanding of the important transition from childhood to adulthood known as adolescence. Havenhurst saw individuals striving to learn the developmental tasks of life to become and to feel like healthy members of society. And he delineated critical times when certain tasks are most easily learned. And he outlined 8 tasks central to successful development that begin in early adolescence. And these are enumerated on page 7. And these are, number 1, achieving mature relations with age mates of both sexes. Number 2, achieving a masculine or feminine social role. Number 3, learning about one's body and using it in healthy ways. Number 4, gaining emotional independence from parents and other adults. Number 5, preparing for marriage and family life. Number 6, preparing for a career. Number 7, developing a set of values and an ethical framework or ideology or both as a guide. And number 8, striving for and achieving socially responsible behavior. If these 8 tasks are successfully managed at various times during the adolescent period, success throughout adulthood is far more likely, according to Havenhurst. And 40 years since Havenhurst proposed these tasks, they still have relevance. In the early 1990s, constructivists posed that student learning was capable of being more intrinsic and that adolescents had far more capacity to think abstractly and hypothetically. Theorists believe that adolescents benefited from cooperative learning, with the educator's role shifting from disseminator to facilitator. So the idea of constructivism is that knowledge and cognitive development are both the products of intersection with information, materials, instruction, and other students. It's really about active learning and about student involvement in the learning process. It's not about being a passive learner. Here's something I want you to think about, and my hint is to check out page 10, the top of it. Why is constructivism so important for early adolescent learners, particularly when you consider some of the physical needs that they have? Take a moment and think about that. I think you'll have an aha moment. Chapter 1 spends quite a bit of time talking about moral development, and it really is based on a lot of research that are done by stage theorists, beginning with Piaget. And Piaget used to describe moral development as the thought process between right and wrong. And he believed this process was in discrete stages that occurred in an orderly fashion. He stated that no matter where the child lived in the world, the stages were the same, and that some children would never reach the final stage, but that the journey was sequential. And you're going to take some time and look at those stages. And then Kohlberg then built on his work, and we'll look at that in the next slide. You are able to navigate on this slide to a site about social and emotional learning, and I encourage you to check it out, because I think one area that educators probably lack professional development resources in the most is in the areas of social and emotional learning, simply because we're not required to take tests like we are in our content areas in social and emotional learning capacities. And we need that, because particularly at the middle school level, because of the great transitions that are occurring, and because so much hinges on students having a healthy social and emotional self-concept. Lawrence Kohlberg built on Piaget's classifications, and he proposed that individuals develop moral judgment by moving through a series of stages contained within 3 levels. And continuing research in this area confirms much of Kohlberg's original ideas. So his 6 stages are as follows. In level 1, which is the pre-conventional level, stage 1, punishment and obedience. This is literal obedience to avoid punishment. In stage 2, individuals develop instrumental purpose and exchange by serving one's own and others' needs for personal benefit. When they move to level 2, which is the conventional level, they enter stage 3, which is mutual interpersonal expectations, relationships, and conformity. This is characterized by the desire to please others and conformed to perceived norms of right and wrong. Stage 4 is characterized as the social system and conscience maintenance stage. This is when one is doing one's duty to preserve social order. So we see that they move from being less selfish to more others oriented. Level 3, post-conventional and principled. Stage 5. This is the prior rights and social contract stage, and it's characterized by commitment to relative social order. Rules may be changed if needed to maintain social order. And then finally, stage 6 is known as the universal ethical principle stage, and it's characterized by action determined by conscience. It's based on self-chosen ethical principles. Middle level educators are most likely to see students who are thinking and acting in terms of moral development in stages 1 through 4. Some middle school students will continue to demonstrate the predominance of stage 1, where they can get away with, certain things, and that determines what is right to them. But near age 10, some children will begin to enter stage 2, where what is right and wrong depends on who is involved in their relationship. I think we start to really see in adolescence them starting to move into stage 3, but you're going to see them moving throughout that gamut there. But stage 3 really becomes central at this age, because it's where approval from groups is important. And do we not all remember feeling that pull and tug? Really, for more than 5 decades, educators and psychologists have shared a growing certainty that the formation of a positive sense of identity may be the most challenging and critical task faced by young adolescents. General understanding of the complexities of identity development has also grown over these years. And we can attribute much of this knowledge growth to Erik Erikson. Erikson categorized adolescence as a time between identity versus isolation. He believed that males that a male's identity was rooted in identity first and intimacy second. For women, Erikson believed that intimacy did play a greater part in the formation, but did not give it the attention that present-day researchers do. Current researchers give credit to Erikson's work in the field of identity and cite that perhaps because of his time period, more attention to female intimacy and identity connections was not investigated. Educational theorist William Glasner believed that adolescents are looking for identity in a different way. Glasner proposed that youth of Erikson's era were looking for survival identity, and youth of today are focused more towards a term success identity. And I believe that that is very much true, especially given the world of social media in which we live, where appearances matter so much. Having a successful appearance, and whatever that means for an individual, I believe that it means so much. Not only is the stage of adolescence a tricky time because of the amount of transition that is going on for these students physically, emotionally, they're also just confronted with so many challenges societally and within the family that really make it just a difficult time to live. Increasing poverty, unemployment, divorce, and a lack of culturally relevant schools or culturally responsive teaching are throwing more obstacles at these students. So more are considered at risk. In addition to that, because we know they're at a stage where social acceptance means so much, there's the increasing access and pressure to do drugs and alcohol, as well as challenges to their purity. And this could change the course of their lives forever. And Dreyfus deems these challenges the new morbidities of our culture. These students are posed with poor motivation to learn, poor grades, which leads to school failure, truancy, negative peer pressure, and social self-concept, and then eventually a rise in depression and misconduct then occur. And not only are many of them living in poverty, many are from minority groups. And so we have to do something to meet these students where they're at and to better address their needs. So they have developed, particularly at the middle school level, many more programs for at-risk youth, realizing that if we don't bridge this gap and address these challenges that they're facing, that these can have long-term consequences. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment, look at the statistics that are on page 25, and think about what are some of the implications that you have witnessed. Maybe you witnessed some specific programming that took place in your middle school classrooms due to some of the challenges that adolescents in your middle school, in your area, are facing. And did you believe that they were helpful in helping students to navigate through their challenges? Because at-risk programs have become so needed and prevalent, a lot of research has been done, and they've come up with 7 cardinal principles for educating young adolescents, particularly those at risk, within our day and age, and these are rooted in research and have shown to be successful. Here they are. They need to encourage and promote emotional support and encouragement for young people. They need to provide opportunities for self-efficacy and personal decision making. They need to develop competence in young people in a non-competitive and non-judgmental way. Even though young people come across as competitive and judgmental, they do it because they're so insecure. They don't want to compete. They don't want to be judged, and yet they do that and throw that out as a front in order to protect themselves and hopefully to divert attention. So we need to know that competition and judgment are not the way to help develop competence. We also need to implement culturally relevant curricula. And again, we're going to talk about culturally responsive teaching and how you can affirm and how you can include cultural assets as strengths within your teaching a little later on in the semester. You need to give personal identity opportunities, and you need to encourage community and a family-like environment within the middle school. These students are not adults yet. They're transitioning from childhood into adolescence. What they need more than anything is to feel loved and to feel that they are part of something. So smallness is very, very important at this time because it lets them feel like they have a home and a place of safety and of acceptance. Whole child initiatives that serve body, mind, soul, and spirit need to be taken on to address the needs outside of academics. And that becomes very easy to address spiritual elements in a Catholic or Christian school. It becomes a little more tricky in the public school, but there are ways to do it by encouraging the virtues, which are just good habits, and by also encouraging mindfulness and presence. And then lastly, encouraging active and engaging classroom curricula, discovery learning, and opportunities where students can be physically involved in the learning process because they need to be kinesthetic and active at this transitional period. This wraps up the key components of Chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed the reading and that you find it to be informative. I look forward to meeting with you in the discussion boards throughout the semester and to reading your reflective writing.